Welcome to the Mystical Truths Podcast. This is Rebecca, and I'm really glad you're here. Let's unlock your world. In this episode, Tammy and Sharon are back to ask more questions. They let me know that after the last episode, which a lot of people really enjoyed, by the way, they had more questions that were sparked from the last conversation. So we're just going to move forward with the questions that the last episode brought up. So Tammy, I think you had initially said that you really wanted to take that further.
Yes, absolutely. It just was so funny how questions just kept popping up when thinking about the soul. So I have like a initial question and a part B and a part C, but I'll just go with the first part of that right now. Does your soul have its own personality? And if so, is that why we have the personality that we have?
Okay, so yes, I would say your soul has its own personality. Not necessarily like the personality that you see in yourself right now, though. So every soul has its own spark, its own spark of energy, its own spark of being, and what we would call a personality that goes along with that. But when we choose to come into a physical life, a personality of the person is one of the things that we're picking. So, for example, if in this life, let's say I wanted to, well, I'll use myself as an example. Apparently, I wanted to learn a lot and teach a lot. And so I picked a personality that was very curious, that was determined in some ways, that was very sensitive. So there's this package that we sort of put together that in our words we call personality, that are unique to this lifetime. And this is why, like, if there's somebody that is just mean or really dominant, that may not be, well, the mean part definitely wouldn't be like their soul. But it's something that they felt is useful and necessary for what they were coming in for this time. Sort of like, when you take a role as an actor, you might choose to be the bad guy or the strong personality because you want to see what it's like to act through that sort of mindset. So yeah, as a soul, we all have our uniqueness, although we are part of the whole. It's our expression, maybe you want to call it, how we express who we are as a whole. But with that, we pick a specific personality that we don in this lifetime. And we kind of see how we do with it, with who we are as a whole. Okay. How do we do with this personality? So sometimes it's, I tell people, if you think of anybody you've known here that has passed, they are that personality to an extent, but a whole lot more. All the good parts you knew of that person and a whole lot more. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. So my part B and C's, you've already answered then, because that would have been like, would we have a different personality every time we reincarnate?
And just like an actor taking a part in a movie, say, that actor can take that personality, that character, and be that, but is going to do a different job of it than I would through my perspective and my personality, or that you would. It's us as a soul coming into this physical stuff and taking on that character and just seeing how we do with it.
Gotcha. Well, you've answered that whole first part of everything so quickly. Okay. Well, do we really have a soulmate? And does that only apply to a romantic partner? Or can you have multiple soulmates, as in family or friends?
Yes, I believe we can have multiple soulmates because, in my understanding of it, a soulmate is another soul that you know and love outside of this lifetime and may have shared many lifetimes with. So you have a unique bond, or maybe you're just closer. And so you may choose when you come in physically to be romantic partners. You may be cousins. You may be friends that meet at work. You may not incarnate at all at the same time. And So if you find that there's one person or maybe a few people that you know how there's just something different about some people that doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but there's just something, there's a connection. There's just something that you can't really explain, but it's a deeper feeling. That would be what we might call soulmate. So it doesn't mean that that soul is tethered to you or that you don't function without that soul. It just means that it's like being best friends in a sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sharon, do you have a question?
Well, no, I have two other questions that kind of go with the soul thing. I was reading up on a doppelganger, and it just gave me a little bit of information, and it said something about that's when your soul splits and you will see the person and then you will see the soul behind it, but like in two different images. So being that the soul, when it focuses on you, can be somewhat of a different percentage here and there, and even wherever it's, focusing on you from. Do you have anything more to kind of educate me with the doppelganger?
Yeah, and that's typically, I think, thought of also as somebody that looks just like you, like another person on this planet that looks just like you or very much like you. I think people use that term for that as well. But as far as like the soul splitting, your soul's already, in a sense, our soul never splits really. Like we would take a stick and split it in two sticks. Your soul as a whole can take part of its focus and intently give its attention through a physical experience, a human body. So it's like being able to sort of be in your car and you're looking out at the world, you're driving, you're keeping yourself on the road, but you are in the car. And you're aware that you're in the car, but you're still aware of what's going on outside of the car and interacting with that in a sense. So as far as doppelganger goes, if we say a soul would, you said split and then sort of the rest of you is there just as a energy or in another body? What was your take on it?
The same person. I'll give you an example of Tammy, because this happened to Tam. She went past the door where her daughter was sitting, and her daughter said hello or just seen her go through. And then like 2 seconds later, she went past the door again, the same direction, which wasn't, she was unable to get through the kitchen door, around the house, and come back in the front door where her daughter had seen her twice in just mere seconds.
So you're saying from her daughter's perspective, she saw her mother twice in timing that wouldn't have made logical sense.
Right.
Well, if you think of the fact that energy doesn't really function in time and space, that would make sense. That would be doable. Was that Tammy both times? Was it her daughter having an experience that maybe didn't even have anything to do with Tammy? Either could be true. And that's why it's experiences like that that help us remember that time and space is just a physical thing here that we've become very used to. And we expect all of the universe and beyond to be in the limitations of time and space. And that's not how it works. That's how we know that we can remote view. For example, I can be here and tune into something else that's in another location, even possibly in another time. So that experience, I would take it as her daughter either re-seeing what she already saw or it replaying, and she just saw it. Because nothing ever goes away. When we have, like the conversation we're having right now doesn't go away. It just vibrates out of our frequency of hearing. The experiences, every experience we ever had is still reachable. And that's why the thought of everything is happening all at once is something that's hard for us to wrap our brains around. but it also kind of makes sense too, because if we can tune into other times, or we can see residual energy of something that already happened, then we know it still exists. It just doesn't exist in the way that we're used to seeing things exist. Does that help?
It's hard to wrap my brain around that one. Yeah, but I kind of get what you're saying.
Even when people talk about, like in near-death experiences, when they say I had a life review, they say I literally lived, I bead in those moments again. Like it was real time. It was really there, but it was very quick. So that helps us to recognize that this is just a very slow, dense game we're playing here. And outside of this physical awareness, of which we are just focused in partially, things are very, very different. And that can be seen here. That's what we call the miracle experiences and the coincidences and things like that, where you think, I just saw my mother, right? Tammy's daughter, thinking, I just saw her. Like she couldn't have gone around that fast to come the same direction. Did it replay? Was it her again? It sparks a lot of questions in us, because we just have a hard time grasping this no time, no space, this energy thing being very different than what we're used to.
Okay, yeah. I can wrap my head around that. That makes sense. But the whole concept about the soul and the percentages, and like you could be on Earth in two different countries at the same time, correct?
Yeah. Even Michael Newton's research, showed that in the between life regression research that he did, and not just his work, but it's out there also with different experiences people have had, that it is possible that we can take on more than one physical life at a time. Because again, we're only focusing part of our attention, and we can multitask as souls much differently than we know multitasking to be here. So could we and would we take two different lives? And we wouldn't take two similar, like we wouldn't come in as twins. There's too much similarity there. They tell us that if we're going to do that, we want two different experiences. So generally speaking, you would pick two totally different bodies, two experiences that are not related or don't run into each other during that lifetime, may come in or out at different timing, right? So we can do that, but it's from what I've understood, it's not very common. It's more common that we just focus into one life experience at a time.
That's what I was thinking about when I'm thinking that the soul could split.
Which really means the soul can just divide its attention, because it's not like part of your soul was plucked off of the hole and dropped into a baby body here. It's just literal focus through this life experience, and can focus just like we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, some of us.
Might be one way to think about it. We can do multiple things at one time. And for us, that's a really watered down example, but it kind of paints the picture enough.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up. I see it more clearly now. Yeah.
Good. There's always going to be mystery, because every question brings more questions. And that's such a good thing. That's how eternity becomes eternal. And so we don't have all of the information here. And I say it all the time, we could all be wrong about all of this. We really could. We could just be entertaining ourselves because this seems right to me. That's it. Because if you look around, especially these days with the accelerated shift that we're in, there are so many different opinions. And if you listen to people who've had spiritual experiences or near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, there's quite a variety in what, or channelers even, there's quite a variety in what is being said. And that can make your head spin, because you think, all right, there should be one truth and we should be telling it. But what Source tells us is there are many truths because of that variety, because there are so many, there are just multitudes of experiences and outlooks. And they tell us that's a really good thing. So if somebody is believing that when we die, we go into like a holding place until Jesus comes and resurrects us, that's their truth. That's their truth for now in this lifetime. Is it really, really true? I don't think so. But then again, we don't know enough to be able to say that there isn't purpose for that kind of variety outside of this physical experience.
Yeah, but on that aspect of thinking that way, it's like everybody has a different experience. So what fits well with you, like within yourself, as far as like, yeah, that resonates with me. I can believe that.
Mm-hmm. And from a really young age, I was just so curious. I wanted the truth. I was just wanted to know, like, what's really going on here, what's really the truth. So it's been difficult for me, more than most people probably, to accept the fact that there's just a lot of truths. And that's why, my website and everything for years now, Mystical Truths with an S on it, because there are so many different truths that I think it's important for us just to follow what feels good to us. Just what is true to you, what hits your truth meter in a really good way. That's what you should
That
go
sounds
with.
good to me.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody else is saying something else hits their truth meter, well, fine. Maybe they're right, and maybe we're all right. Maybe we're all wrong. And that's why we can have a lot of fun in this life if we just do what lights up for us and pay attention to what makes sense to us, and let everything else go, because there is so much variety here that we're not ever in a human experience. We are not going to all agree on everything, on maybe even one thing. I think we all agree that we wake up and go to sleep and we breathe air. But, when it comes to other things, there are just varying opinions. I mean, look at politics. Oh, yikes.
Yeah, I have to laugh at that one.
I'm not much of a Twitter X person, but things come up on there and I'll just look and I don't want to be much of a Twitter X person, because it's just astounding what people say on there. It's like, I've done my research. This is the one I'm voting for. This is the one. And then somebody else will say, I've done my research. This is the one I'm voting for. And somebody else will say, well, I've done my research. And so, it just shows how fickle we are. We're all doing our research and we're proving that we're all different and we come up with different opinions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else is on your mind?
Why would a soul get stuck? Once you die, aren't you immediately aware of your higher self? And, why wouldn't you just go back to your higher self? Why would you get stuck here on Earth?
I don't believe we do. And that one's probably a difficult one for a lot of people, because, and again, like I've heard channelers say things like, there's maybe like this in-between place, or there's this outer ring around the earth we have to go retrieve souls from, and things like that. And none of that hits my truth radar at all. It really doesn't, because what makes sense to me and what I've picked up from the other side, and what I've even, heard some people translator channel that I agree with, is that every soul makes its transition from physical into non-physical. In other words, every soul withdraws that focus. Mm-hmm. And even if it takes us a little bit to shake off the dust, or maybe there is a process we go through, I believe that we all successfully complete that transition. We tend to think of it as like, I'm going somewhere. And if I don't go and make that journey, that trip, I'm stuck. And I think that as a soul, it's not like we withdraw from this physical experience and we are like masters of all masters. We're a work in progress, I think, as souls, because there's eternity and there's expansion and there's always more and more and more and more and more. So we're always gathering and having fun with it and finding joy in it and not being damaged by any of it. No matter how tough a life is here, I don't believe that it damages any soul, and that we don't take any of that negativity with us. I can see where it might take us a while to like kind of get our head back on again, in a sense. You know what it's like if you've been through something that really, really gets your attention. It can take you a second to shake that off. That could be possible. But I do believe that we all withdraw our focus, and we have help along the way, because we do a lot of people get very dug in here. So the process of death is a beautiful one, and it has everything in it for each individual person to help them re-enter wholly into non-physical. So what do we do about all the talk here about ghosts and people who are stuck and hauntings and things like that? I believe that that is residual energy.
Okay.
If there is any entity or soul or whatever that people say is negative or doing negative things, I believe that is also source meeting us where we want to be met or speaking the language we want to hear right now, because we'll come through it all back into our full trust eventually. But in this world of contrast, if we want to get down and dirty, we certainly can. And there are teachers that can teach from those angles, but I wouldn't be afraid of any one of them because there's nothing to fear. And when we have hauntings or we have ghost experiences or whatever, it can be a few things. It can be that person or the people or the energy of a group even attracting. We can attract whatever we want. We can make real whatever we want. So if we, without even intending to consciously want to be terrified, we certainly can kick that up. That can be done. But again, it's all out of love in sort of disguise, you might want to say. Otherwise, I think it's, like I said, nothing ever really goes away. So you can tap into things that have already happened, experiences that people have already had here. So if, let's say that there is I remember somebody saying one time that they were staying at a house, some huge house, and they heard noise downstairs. They were up in the bedroom, one of the bedrooms, and they heard noise downstairs, and they came down the steps and saw like this whole ball happening out in this huge room, like all these people dancing and, like old time. And there's no way we're going to call that a haunting or souls that are stuck. How is a whole group of souls that attended that party going to be stuck there after they died and come back just to that party?
Yeah.
So it helps us realize that, okay, yeah, that party happened and there was a lot of energy in that. And these people just tapped into it. They just happened to see something that you could say is replaying, but it's not. It's just playing. It's just always available.
So would it be, I don't know if you've told us this before or not, but like if a person dies abruptly and violently, are they like confused and they don't like just go back to their higher self? They kind of just hang out here because they don't know what just happened to them? Or does it take a while sometimes for you to just go back to your higher self?
I don't think it takes a while. I think that happens in a flow, but how we shake off the stink, so to speak, of life, I could see. Life is always intertwined with all of us. Non-physical is always intertwined with all of us. Always aware of where we're at, what we're experiencing, and where the benefits are to that, given our free will. So somebody dies we'll say a mean, tragic death. We don't know what the purpose for that was for that soul, but all of creation does. And it's not like the purpose was you had to die in this terrible way because you did something karmically. That there's not that. There's just, we bring ourselves to what we bring ourselves to. And the trauma of it isn't what we think it is. Once we have withdrawn our focus, which oftentimes happens before the tragedy is really that bad, right? Or before the experience is that extreme. So once the focus is withdrawn, and as it's being withdrawn, before, during, after, there's always non-physical counterparts helping. There's always that support, that guidance, that nurturing that just brings us right along smoothly through that process, whether it looks like that to the human eye or not. And that continues. So again, if a soul maybe was really, really dug in here and really riding life hard and then had a hard exit, it's sort of what the soul brought itself to through that experience, and none of it is wrong or bad. It may be unwanted from a conscious standpoint, but it's not wrong or bad. It just is what it is. But if that soul withdraws focus and just sort of is, like I said, having a little bit of a reorientation issue, if that's even a thing, there's support for that. We are known better than we know ourselves while we're in physical. Non-physical knows every one of us way better than we know ourselves, knows what we want, what we intended as a soul, what would be helpful for us as we make that transition. And that's why now we know what near-death experiences are, and they're varied, but we really can't say we know exactly what the death experience is because you don't come back from that one to tell your story. But in a near-death experience, people often will say, my so-and-so was there, but my other, like my soulmate wasn't there, or my partner from life wasn't there, but my Aunt Mary was there, or Jesus was there. And it's whatever suits you in the moment, and they know what's going to work for you.
Now, when you say they, you're talking about like your spirit guides, your angels, or
the rest of us, the rest of the crew. For me, I understand why we use words like spirit guides and angels and ascended masters and Jesuses and Buddhas and things like that. But it just seems more real to me to put us all sort of in one category of love, of souls that are looking out for each other, souls that are expanding maybe in very different ways. Because I think that helps us stop the idea that they are holier than we are, or that they are wiser than we are. We're just one of them that's partially physically focused right now. And of course, if you put somebody in a dark room, it's really helpful if they have some friends on the outside that can see through the dark and say, you might want to walk forward, stop right there, make a left over here, just guide us through.
Well, my next question is about like the fifth dimension. Now, I have heard that that's where the unseen kind of, I don't know, live. I don't know if that's the right word for it. Where they exist, maybe? Is that where our soul is at?
Well, your soul is right here having this conversation with us. You are your soul. It's just the bigger percentage of you is right here, but not focused into the human experience. So it's a whole experience, like your whole soul is doing this thing, but it needs to have some of its attention. It's sort of like back to driving the car. The bigger part of you has to be in the car driving. You have to be working the controls, while part of you is focused out there and very engaged with the traffic lights and the people and traffic. So you can be aware and in this physical lifetime, but you're just not totally in it. So our soul isn't somewhere. Our soul is right where our awareness is. So what the fifth dimension, I mean, the dimensions are not physical places. The dimensions, we can say, are states of being, or are where we be present or focused or aware in any given moment. And I don't believe that we go from dimension to dimension to dimension by location or by awareness. I believe we mix it up. There may be moments where you're more third dimension, you're just more physically aware. There may be times where you're more fourth dimension, which would be sort of more spiritually aware, or fifth dimension, where you're focused on or more aware of non-physical. And that's why people say the fifth dimension is where heaven exists. It's the other side. It's where thoughts are created. It's where we become aware of more than just this physical body or this physical experience. So you can see how we would, just in this life that we're having, because our awareness will shift, there are times where we're more third dimensional. There's times where we're more fifth dimensional. Does that make sense?
I don't know, because I'm thinking the fifth dimension is some place where you have to focus to be able to see things. Is that not true?
Well, because it's not a place you're focusing, though. It's an awareness that you're shifting. You're shifting your awareness. Just like your soul focuses into a third dimension. While you're in this third dimension, the soul's awareness can shift around.
Okay, so I must be getting it kind of mixed up in my head as far as a place, and it is not a place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't believe it's a place because we're talking non-physical. How could it be a place? This is how we've become so confused as people, because we've been taught that like heaven is out there somewhere and you go there when you're done. Like you leave your body and you go there physically. Well, how can you do that if you're not physical? Energy is energy. It doesn't know time and space. It doesn't function in time and space like we do. It doesn't have a voice box to communicate. It doesn't need ears to hear. Energy is transmitted. Sort of like how the energy goes into your radio or your TV. Again, maybe not the best example, but it's something we can relate to. And the funny thing is, and this is why, we're just so fickle as people, because if you look up maybe symbology, the symbol of a dove or a tree or whatever, you'll find a whole bunch of different answers to that. If you look up what does numerology, like what does 0 through 9 or 10, what does it represent? What does it mean? Look it up. You'll get all kinds of different answers to that. You just have to go with what feels right to you, because just like the dimensions, if you look up, I'm guessing if you look up and do a search for like the 12 dimensions or 13 or 15 or 500 or 5, whatever you think they are, you'll find all of that. And you'll find different versions of it in anything you read, especially online. Because people have different perspectives and they're interpreting things different. So again, it takes us to, well, what the hell is the truth then? What are these dimensions and what do we want to know about them? It has to be an inside job like everything else. You just have to go with what rings your truth bell and what suits your sense of truth or awareness, and let that expand as you go through eternity.
Would that also be like you said, it's an awareness, but people have different interpretations of it. So whatever the interpretation that you feel comfortable with, that makes you understand it better in your mind, is that what you should then believe?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have much of a choice, because you are where you are in this human experience. And so that's like I was saying, like if it really feels logical and hits a truth meter somewhere, for somebody to believe that when we die, we go into this holding place where Jesus comes and enlightens us from, if that really feels good to that person, then I would say believe it and enjoy that belief. I don't believe it, but I don't need them to believe what I believe, and I certainly don't need to believe what they do. That's variety, right? And that's what we want here. If we came here and we all believed the same things, we would be so bored. If we wanted the same things. That's why I tell people, that want a relationship and think that they have to get themselves to some sort of way before they can be, desirable for other people. We all have such different varieties of who we're attracted to and what that looks like and what it sounds like, that thank goodness, because if we all were attracted to the same type of person, that would be a problem.
Yeah, it would.
And so we're not all going to be attracted to the same spiritual, religious, non-affiliated. We're just not all going to subscribe to the same channels. We're not going to listen to the same YouTube videos or the same podcasts. We're not going to read the same books. We're not going to be the same while we're here. We may be similar with other people. And some people get really agitated by all of that variety. Like, we should clean this up. It should not be that varied, because there's a lot of it that I don't like and I don't want. So get rid of that and then we'll be okay. And Source tells us, no, that'll never work. And it's not what we want here. We want the variety. It's okay if some people like baked beans and I don't. I actually do like it. It's okay. It's okay if some people want to vote for that presidential candidate and there's no way I'm going to vote for that one. That's okay. So what do we do about that? Right? Let's take politics for example. And I'm not a fan of politics, but let's use it because it's a really good example, especially this year. Instead of saying, I'm going to do my research and figure out who I'm going to vote for, instead of that, I would say, tell the story that you want to be true. Talk about a government the way you like a government to be. Talk about what is working well and what could improve and how you would like it to be, and then feel your way to the voting booth. And that's true with anything. If you don't like the fact that people do some of the things that they do, how would you like it to be? Not for them. Don't try to change their experience. Just how would you like your experience to be? Like maybe I would love my experience to not include those people. That's fair enough. Because you're not going to change them, nor should you want to. Everybody's up to something different here, and they have every right to do whatever it is they're doing and sync up with other people that match that in some way or another. So if we look at people that are maybe in gangs and we think, oh, no, see, we should just either remove them from the planet or like change them, send them to church or something. That'll do it. So that doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work when we try to push people into what we think they should be. It makes them rebel because everybody's freedom is what's important to them. What does help is if we love them from where they're at and mind our own damn business.
I agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have enough on your plate with some of the challenges that you go through in your lifetime. You don't need to borrow somebody else's or cause somebody else to have a huge challenge because you don't agree with them.
Right. And you also don't need to make your life more complicated by caring that much about what they're up to and what you think they should be up to. That just complicates your life. Now, not only are you trying to juggle your own balls or whatever. Every time I say balls of my grandsons, they just have that in my mind now. They go, balls. So I'll change that. So it's one thing if you're juggling your own details of life, but to invite in more by doing something that is impossible makes it even worse. Because for us to judge other people and want to fix them because we think they're broken just does nothing but complicate our world and make us miserable, because nobody's broken. Nobody needs fixed. We're all just different. And if we don't like what somebody else is up to, we do not have to include that into our life experience in any fashion. And people will say, well, how do I know? It might just creep into my life experience. It only creeps in if you give your attention to it or something like it.
Yeah, that is true.
Because nothing comes out of the blue. It comes out of the oblivious. Because sometimes people aren't paying attention to where their thoughts have been at predominantly. Therefore, what they could be, what they are attracting some version of. But we can be aware. We can be attentive to what we're giving our airtime to, what we're giving our attention to. So, for example, with the government, people thinking, oh, that's, this is terrible. Well, they're not helping. That's why we have such a odd ordeal going on. It's such an odd situation because people just have made it a habit to give more of their attention to what they don't want and don't like than what they do want and what they do like. But we're getting better at it, I believe.
Well, I'm definitely getting better at it, but I can't say for sure the TV is.
I don't watch much TV at all. I'm very selective about any news that I listen to or read because I don't want anybody else's opinion or spin on anything. I just want to know. So there's a war in Ukraine. I know that. And there are people getting awards for things that they do. I know that. I don't need to be very specific on anything that just doesn't that I'm not that interested in. Because so people can say, well, then you're not helping either, because you're not really being attentive to the specifics of what's happening in this world. I'm very attentive. I'm just not attentive to the negativity. I'm attentive to, how do I like it to be? What is working out in this world? What could go well for us? That's what I'm giving my airtime to. What do I like? Where is the beauty?
Where is the honey? I love that phrase.
What's funny about that is, so everybody that listens to this podcast knows that I talk about finding the honey. Where's the honey? There's honey in everything, even the things that we want to call bad. So I had a client here not that long ago, and my office is just off of the kitchen. So there's a door that opens into the kitchen. The door was open. I didn't bother. I usually shut it, but I didn't for whatever reason. She was sitting with her back to that door, and I'm facing that door across from the table from her. She's going through a big breakup. So I was talking to her about the honey, and how to find the honey through what she's experiencing. And suddenly something caught my attention. I looked up, and between like my microwave and my stove, I said to her, "There's a bumblebee in my kitchen." And she said, "Really?" She turned around and she said, "You were just talking about honey." I said, "I know. That is really awesome." So I got up and I said, "Just hang on one sec." I got up and walked into the kitchen, and it was hovering up to the ceiling at this point. And I said, "Hey, thank you." I said, that was just amazing timing. Like, it was just, thank you so much for just being here and letting us know that you're paying attention. And I'm talking to all of creation, not just the bee. And I said, "So follow me." So now I'm talking to the bee at this point. And I said, "So follow me." And I walked over to the sink. There's a window above the sink, and it followed me. It came actually closer than I really expected it to, because I looked up and I thought, it is so beautiful. It was like fuzzy and very yellowish, and it was just beautiful and very calm. And I opened the window and the screen, and I said, "I'm going to open this window for you if you'd like to go out. I don't know how you got in here. I have no clue how you got in here. If you would like to go out, the window's open. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay." It was a little bit chilly out, but not too bad. So it was safe to leave the window open as far as the cold goes. And so I came in and I shut the door to my office, just because I didn't want my client to feel like there was potentially a bee that was going to come up behind her. So I shut the door and I said, "Do whatever you do." So we went back and we finished the whole session. And when we got up, we went out and the bee was gone. I don't know if it went out the window or back into the ethers, but it was gone. And so it was just so fun. And so I looked up after she left, I looked up on my phone, do bumblebees make honey? And they do. They don't make as much as honeybees. They have a different, like, they make enough, I guess, for their tribe or whatever. And they go underground, like not that far underground, I guess, in the winter. And the worker bees die off, and the queen bee comes out and starts the whole new thing. I guess she lays eggs or whatever, however they do that. So for that time of year, they shouldn't have been out yet. Like, I shouldn't have seen one yet. But there she was. And not long after that, it was Easter Sunday, and we were sitting in my dining room, and I have a big window in my dining room. That's where I feed the birds, and there are little trees out there, and I feed the squirrels, all my little animals. And my grandson said to me, "Mim," because they call me Mimi, which has become Mim because it's just quicker. "Mim, Mim, look, there's a bumblebee outside your window." Aww. And there was a bumblebee outside my window. Now, some of the flowers have come out on some of the trees. And now every day when I look out there, there's just tons of bumblebees around the tree. And, wow, just having their good time with the flowers. And what I've noticed is none of them look like the one I saw in my kitchen. They're all like more black than they are yellow. They're darker. And I know for sure, because that one came so close, it was just that fuzzy yellow. So I haven't looked up enough to see if that was the queen bee or what. I just think it's fun that now bumblebees are all over the place in my life because of the honey. Because of the honey. And to me, yeah, and that's just validation that we're being paid attention to. That's how subtle Source is. Just a nice little soft way to say, yeah, the honey. Keep talking about that honey. And here we are. We're right here. Can you see the bee? We can influence this bee to come and just be playful and just give you a little sign that we're all in this together. We're paying attention. It's fun.
I love that story. Yeah.
And things like that happen all the time. If you're just willing to be easy and pay attention and give these things credit. I mean, like I said, I've lived in this house for 14 plus years. I've never had a bumblebee in the kitchen that I can remember, especially that time of year. And what timing? I mean, what timing? I'm in this office a lot with that door open. So what timing that bumblebee was there just as I was talking about honey with a new client. You can't make it up. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yep. Very cool.
Does the soul seem to have too much power over us?
Does another soul have more power over another soul? Is that what you mean?
No,
your soul.
Our soul over our physical body. You know how you said that the soul makes a decision whether to leave or to stay. Even though the body might say, well, I have a concert next week. I don't want to go. Well, you're going. Kind of like that. Does it have too much power over our physical body?
Well, yes and no, because it doesn't have too much power. It has the right amount of power. It has the exact power that is perfect for every body and every situation. Your inner being, your higher self, will not override your free will to make decisions here from this perspective, but it is always influencing it. It is always cheering it on, guiding, helping to steer in a sense, but is not overpowering. Now, the death thing is going to happen because your higher self is going to make sure that everything plays off beautifully for that exit to happen. Because that's just your plan, that's agreed upon, that's something that you might have forgotten because you get so dug in here, but you do want that to happen. Now, with that said, if you have a concert next week and you have your tickets, you paid your money, you want to go to the concert, your higher self is really wanting you to go to the zoo instead because there's a better experience at the zoo than there is at that concert. Your inner being will highlight that. It will give you signs of that. It'll show you as best it can that the zoo would be the better experience, but you are still free to go to the concert. And, we all do this all of the time. We override that guidance. I still do it to this day sometimes. And I think I knew better. Like I got that hit and I didn't take it. Right. I knew that would be, you just get that sense in little things too. It can be, like today I was at the grocery store, and I was at the organic banana section and I picked out some bananas, and I just felt like I wanted to grab some for my daughter and her kids. I normally don't do that. She does her own grocery shopping, but I just wanted to grab a bunch of bananas for her. And I did. And I talked to her just before we came on here. And I said, by the way, I don't know if you need them, but I picked you up some bananas today at the store. And she said, oh, I don't. Yes, I definitely need the bananas. So it wasn't a big deal. It's not the end of the earth, but it is in sync with that flow. It can be that simple. And it can be the things that we call bigger decisions. Now, if I had not picked up those bananas, and that was my inner being saying, just giving me that nudge, just that thought, that feeling like I just want to get some extra bananas. I didn't have to do it though. My logic could have said, no, just get your own bananas. And that would have been fine. Her life would have played out still beautifully. My life would continue. It wouldn't have upset anything terribly, but it just makes life so much easier. It's just a nice flow. And it's a validation of that was my intuition. That was my inner being saying, it would be good for you to grab some extra bananas. Your inner being, your higher self, your soul is not going to overpower what you're doing here, because it's a co-creative, beautiful, synchronized process that's happening. There's no need to overpower anything.
Okay.
Well, Sharon, were you asking sort of like you want to go to the concert next week, but your soul says, no, you're making your exit tomorrow. You're not going to make the concert. Is that what you were kind of asking?
Yeah.
It's still you, and that's why the bigger percentage of you is not physically focused, because that bigger part of you has to look out for this part of you who is in this limited understanding, limited memory, limited knowing, and will help you get to the mile markers that you wanted to get to, will help guide you. And just, you as a soul know yourself so well, you know what tricks will work, right? Sharon's inner self knows how to get this Sharon to where it would be really important to be. And death is one of those things. If you really watch anybody's death experience, it is perfectly synchronized for them. The players that don't show up, that normally would have shown up, there's no wrong thing about that. That's not out of sync. That's in sync. I always use something like 9/11 as an example. There are people who would have been in that building normally that were not there that day. There were people who normally would not have been there that were there. And that's how well synchronized the means of exits are for all of us. So it's not your higher self saying, sorry, Sharon, I know you wanted to make that concert, but too bad, I'm taking you out of the game. It's your inner being saying, go ahead, plan the concert. I mean, you're not going to make the concert, but go ahead and plan. It's nice to think about. You can buy the tickets. Because that's just one of those things that's going to get you, you're busy thinking about the concert, so you're not paying attention to the fact that the exit is coming.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that's why I don't think we should really worry about our exit, because we're well taken care of. And the more ease you have about that, the sweeter your exit's going to be, because you're not calling in the rough withdrawal.
Interesting.
I think if you knew when your exit was going to be, you'd be worried about that maybe a year or two before it even, was going to happen, where you could just go clear up to the time of your exit and be happy-go-lucky and enjoy your life, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. We would be too focused on it.
Uh-huh.
How can you pay attention to what you're doing here if you know your clock's ticking?
Yeah.
Which it is ticking for all of us. We just don't know when the alarm's going to go off. And that's a really good thing. It's just like pregnancy. We know pregnancy lasts so many weeks, but we don't know for sure when that baby's coming. It happens in perfect timing. So we come in perfect timing, even if it doesn't seem like it to the human people. And we leave in perfect timing, even if it doesn't seem like it to humans. In one of the podcasts, I think it was Kim who said, in order to understand someone's death, you have to understand or take a look at their life. And I told her after, I said, you didn't realize how profound that was. That was really deep and correct, because if you look at someone's death experience, and then if you knew their life experience, you can connect a lot of dots to how that all played out for that person.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like that podcast. I like all your podcasts, but I really like that one a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure Kim does too.
Absolutely. She did such a great job of telling the story. Mm-hmm. It was great.
And that's what's funny, like everybody's nervous before they come on here. But once we get talking, once we just get that initial flow going, this is not hard, is it?
I just feel so much like we're back in class.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Tammy and I are like those two little chipmunks on the cartoons way back in the 60s, We still do that.
That's funny. So we covered it all. For now, there's always going to be more. Uh-huh. So I want to give a little shout out to everybody out there and just tell you how much I appreciate. I mean, I see the areas that everybody's listening from, whether it's in this country, different countries. And if any of you want to join me on the show, you're more than welcome to talk to me about it. I'm really particular, but I am really open to any of you that have questions, or if you've had a spiritual experience that you don't understand or you want some help with, or you had a near-death experience or whatever, run it past me. We may be able to do it. And it doesn't take a lot. Sharon and Tammy are not tech savvy. Am I right?
Right.
And we have made this work pretty easily. And I want to thank you both specifically. You got this started with guests coming on the show, and everybody's just loved both of you, as like I do, and your questions. So I really do appreciate you both coming back on again, especially.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Keep your questions coming.
Will do.
I really appreciate you both and all of you out there. If any of you would like personal direction, or keep your ears and eyes open, because I'm going to offer the tarot series pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, the whole thing made easy. But until then, or until next time, you can find me at mysticaltruths.com.